Sister Kitty Moloney. And we've got Gloria Noel and Dr. Jeff Dayton. The first time I met Sister Kitty Moloney was in St. James School, and when she was part of the handling the after-school care at ECP. A very warm, kind, and gentle person, but boy did she have those kids in line. So they knew not to mess with Sister Kitty. Part of her ministries throughout her career has been a lot of presence in elementary education, in healthcare, and in parish work. Sister is a trained spiritual director. Sister has also been a nurse and a medical assistant for 9 years at Kaiser, truly learning something new every time I see her. Sister is also part of the leadership of basically the retreat and the Mary and Joseph regional area, but she's part of the retreat up here, the retreat center in Palos Verdes. So Sister, please, and ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm welcome for Sister Kitty Moloney.
Now, for today, to take on what I am going to do, I left a paper over there that has some books that you might be interested in, but it's very difficult to recommend a book to some people because we all look at things from a different perspective. And I suppose two aspects I will look at is the historical aspect of death and living and dying. And I particularly have the American book of Living and Dying, Lessons in Healing Spiritual Pain by Richard Groves and Henrietta Ann Clauser. And another good one that you might like to have is Hard Choices for Loving People by Hank Dunn, and they are not new at all. This one is a new one. And we have the two experts here, Dr. Jeffrey Dayton and Gloria Jones. They will give you all of the necessary from the medical point of view. I would like to just start out by saying America has two trends regarding death and dying. The first is related to the outstanding contribution of the hospice movement. Within one generation, palliative or comfort care has changed the face of the end-of-life medicine. Today, nearly every community, regardless of its size, has access to hospice services. Marvelous doctors, nurses, caregivers, and chaplains, plus the wonderful army of volunteers who become involved in this. And because of their work, fewer persons die in pain, and neither do the family have to carry the burden of caregiving alone. And 91% of all of those who have received the hospice care give it high rating. Now, perhaps this is why America's second trend is all the more troublesome to report. The second trend is the stark assertion that the last two generations of Americans have not died well. This is no casual opinion, loosely expressed, but a quote from the first president of the American Academy of Hospice and Palliative Medicine, Dr. Arif Boyack, and I hope I'm pronouncing her correctly. She points out that Americans spend more money on medicine and high-tech care at the end of life than any other society in history. Physicians now have an arsenal at their disposal to control physical symptoms like breathlessness, nausea, and pain. Yet for many of us, some at the moment of death, something essential is missing. An increasing number of hospice professionals are also dismayed. And then what are we doing, or what can we happen? And while we have that, we have both in line. And I would like to add in here, it seems like a hard knock at the professionals, but we who have our loved ones, either in the hospital or that they have to be taken care of, we have to take more responsibility for their care and for seeing that they do not go through it. It's very difficult on the medical profession. The paramedics or whoever attend them, they have to carry out the law. They have to do what they feel. They are committed to saving a life. When in reality, if it's an older person, they should not have to be put through that trauma to save their life, when in reality, they have expressed a desire to die peacefully and to die when it's time. Now, the other part I would take, as I said there, the hospice, and that was in 1967. Dame Cecilia Saunders, or Dr. Cecilia Saunders, established St. Christopher's Hospice in London. And she was challenging the perception that people did not have to die in agony. And as a result of her vision, the modern hospice movement was created, and a realistic hope for a future in which nobody has to die alone or with pain. And Dr. Saunders approaches what she calls total pain management from a psycho-spiritual perspective, advocating understanding the conflict of a patient's distress. Now, the other thing is, and perhaps most of my work has been done, I did work at Kaiser for 9 years, and I worked in many of the different disciplines there. I was basically a medical assistant, but I worked in different areas and with different patients and here, and then I worked in parishes. And the difficulty there, I come from a society. My brother was diagnosed with cancer. He was a man who was never, ever ill. He was 79, and he got esophageal cancer, and his daughter was with him, and she was a nurse. And she just felt so desperate for him and for herself, and he was in hospital, in St. James Hospital in Dublin. And she thought, what can I do? Now, if you're Irish, you'll understand this very easily. This is, you go to the pub, and my brother loved to go to the pub. And she went and found a wheelchair, and there was a pub across the street, so she took him over for a few pints. Now, would we think of doing that here? Maybe we would, for some of you. And then, when they'd go up to see him when he was in the hospital, they researched, in the sense through friends and through maybe two of them would go. One of them would decide, now you go and find the best pub. And they would take him out in the car, and that would be it. And just about a week or two before he died, I happened to be home, actually about maybe 3 weeks, happened to be home, and a neighbor came in and she said, I'm here to collect them for the pub. Who's ready? So he was taken, well, that's where he met his companions, and they would talk. And I'm thinking back to Dr. Cicely Saunders helping the patient pain management. Years ago, when we didn't have this, many of the people, or like the men who would come to visit my brother when he was sick at home, they would always have a little parcel inside their pockets, and that was usually a baby powder or a little whiskey. And that was the pain reliever. Now, I'm also probably thinking of patients dying alone and how difficult that is. And then I'll go in to talk a little bit about the spiritual aspect of dying. And the spiritual aspect is not necessarily religion. This is for everyone.